Tuned in to the Diamond Hogs podcast. Doing things a little bit differently right now. Most people are used to listening to this on Mondays and Fridays, sometimes Thursdays, and it's the off season, of course. But we're also trying something new. So for those who don't know, I've taken over as managing editor at HawgBeat.com, trying to try some new things out with our podcast network that we're starting up. And so this is really a trial run for stuff that we're going to do during football. So. That's what we're doing this for. That's why we're doing it at 2:30 on a Tuesday. And also we're doing it at 2:30 on a Tuesday because if we don't do it now, this episode is probably not going to get done because football starts up on tomorrow on Wednesday. So that's why it's happening today. For those who are like, what the heck is going on? Why did Mason say something at like noon today and we only had a couple hours? That's why. But this episode is going to be dedicated to talking about the roster turnover for the Arkansas baseball team, something that we kind of hit a little bit during our draft recap episode. If you didn't check that out, you can go listen to it on the HawgBeat YouTube or type in HawgBeat Podcast Network. Wherever you get your podcast, you can find it there. And but this episode is not, we don't want to talk about the MLB draft a whole lot, but I feel like really we need to start with this, guys. We need to start with Julian Bosnick signing with the Pirates. He was transferring in from South Carolina to Arkansas. That was the plan. He was probably going to be an important arm on next year's staff. And Cabo, I want to start with you. Why is it that he ended up signing? Because I feel like a lot of people expected him not to, including, I believe, the Pirates GM even came out and said he thought that they were done signing. And then, close to the deadline, like a few minutes before the deadline, he signed.
Yeah. And if any Arkansas fan watched Ben Cherington last year when they drafted Braylon Bishop out of Texarkana, they know that he's going to do everything he can to save a nickel. And I think he did that this year with them getting Tamar Johnson in the first round, knowing that they could, give him a number that would save a little bit, in the later rounds. Cherington's notorious for drafting in the late rounds and getting a value. They've set up a really good farm system, and they've done it via the draft. Yeah, they've had some trades, but I think they had $679,000 between two picks that they could use. And that's without going into the penalty phase of, with the bonus pool. So I think Bosnick had to do a double take. So there's a lot of weighing factors. And I talked to someone that's with the Arkansas baseball team last week. They said it's 50-50 on Bosnick. We think it's 50-50 right now. And I that was about right in my eyes. So you get somebody that's coming off an injury, you really don't know what's going to happen. If you look at the guys that had injuries that were related to Arkansas's 2023 roster in terms of Peyton Paulette, went under TJ, was not going to pitch next year, went high enough to get selected, signed for 1.5. He's going to start his major league career next year. Cole Phillips went number 57 to the Braves, 1.5 million, 1.49 and change. There's a lot of unknown, especially if you come after Tommy John surgery and you don't know if you're going to bounce back just as well. Are you going to have a year of getting used to things, and then your second year is your big year? Bosnick didn't have that luxury. He came back committed to Arkansas thinking, okay, I can go be a dude there because they've got a young staff. They've got a lot of guys that are going to be moving on. This is somewhere that I could fit in. And he's seen them up close and personal the last 2 years. He's a really good SEC arm. I think he took what he got because that was going to be his floor. If he came back, pitched at Arkansas, it didn't go as well, he may go in the 18th, 19th, 20th round and sign for $25,000. So he took what he could get. It was a number that, was close to what he was wanting, and he ended up signing. That happens every day, and it's bad for Arkansas fans because they were looking for that veteran arm like Cody Franks on the left side to come in, and Bosnick was that guy. It was going to be pushing for an SEC weekend spot. So that's the biggest thing, and if you break it down and look at it, it made sense for him in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, on the bright side, though, for Arkansas, they kept Zach Morris. I don't know if a lot of people were super scared of him leaving, but it was a good sign when he decided to say, hey, I'm coming back to Arkansas. Another guy who's coming back to Arkansas, Brady Slavens. Robert, I don't know if we expected Brady Slavens to be coming back to Arkansas. He didn't get drafted, and I don't know, you felt like he was probably going to end up signing as a free agent. but he had that extra year of eligibility, and I'm sure he probably didn't get the number he wanted or the situation he wanted. And, it's a really good situation in Fayetteville. So I think that it's probably the best decision for Brady Slavens to come back. I don't know, Robert, do you feel like it's one of those situations where maybe it's not so much you come back to Arkansas because you can get better, but maybe you come back to Arkansas because it's just the best situation available?
So, I mean, the way I saw it, it was like, he, even if he comes back to Arkansas this year, I don't see him improving his draft position. I don't see him getting drafted in 2023. So, maybe he realizes his baseball playing days are coming to a conclusion, and why not spend your last year in Fayetteville where you've had 2 really good years so far?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's a good decision for him. As far as the overall outlook of this Arkansas roster for next season, I feel like a lot of people are really, I guess there's a lot of disappointment from what I have gathered from the people who follow Razorback baseball closely. And you have a lot of, very fair weather fans, especially with baseball. But the people who follow the roster closely realize that this team lost a lot in the lineup. They're only returning 2 guys now from the starting lineup, which is Brady Slavens and Peyton Stovall.
Hey, you know
But
what,
I don't
though?
know.
It was only supposed to be 1. So the fact that it's
Right.
2 is
It was. And I mean, like, if you think about it, if you look at how good Kendall Diggs is doing in the Appalachian League, I mean,
Yeah.
like, that makes you feel better. Jace Borafin is another guy that's going to be returning who's been with the team for a year now. That's a good thing as well. And of course, the pitching staff's going to be really good. But the big question is these JUCO guys that are coming in, because you didn't get a whole lot of D1 transfers. Jared Wegner out of Creighton, Tavian Josenberger out of Kansas, Hudson Polk, the catcher out of Oklahoma, Cal Kilgore from New Mexico State, he's a catcher as well, and then John Bolton from Austin Peay. Cabo, I think the position that a lot of people want to know about, and Christian, we'll get to you here in a minute. I don't want to forget about Christian, but Cabo, I think a lot of people want to know about the catcher position. How are you feeling about the catcher position?
I'm like everybody else. I'm kind of baffled, and I think that's the best word to describe it. I know a lot of the JUCO catchers that are out there. Kilgore actually played a couple of weekends with us with the prospects a couple of years ago, and he was okay. He was really thin, about 165, 170, and you get that, from juniors going into their senior year. That stuff kind of happens where they can really mature afterwards. So, you got him. You got somebody that a player that didn't make it at Arkansas State, that went to Eastern Oklahoma, and he'll do okay, but I don't think he's a starter. I think Polk is the favorite going in based on everything that you've seen up to this date. There were some guys that I know that we as a travel ball club reached out to this coaching staff and said, hey, these are a couple of guys you may want to look at. They're going to be looking for a home. And I think it would be a really good fit. Those guys weren't high enough on the list. That's understandable. That happens every time. We can't just call up, a coach and say, hey, this guy's ready to go, take him, or, it's your fault. That's not how the recruiting game works. So I think when they told Dylan Leach in April that, hey, we got a couple of guys, we're going to bring in a couple of guys. The 3 that they brought in weren't the guys on the top of their list. I just don't see that how it could happen. So we've obviously talked about the guys that have went in the draft, Price from Mercer, Skeens as well talked about, even though he's a pitcher now, maybe hitting, but it's just going to be, when you talk about catching and you hear it from SEC coaches all the time, what they look for is how you receive, how you block, how you throw, how you handle a staff, your mental capacity for doing that. And then the last thing is hitting. We were fortunate with Michael Turner because he's a pro hitter. Opus was not a good hitter. Grant Cook did okay. Did good with the long ball. Going back to Wise, McCann was offensive guy, but they need that guy that's going to be able to control a running game, shut it down, and be a good defensive catcher and let the offense come from somewhere else. So it's going to be interesting to see. Like I said, I'm baffled by it right now, but I think there's some there's some good things to look at. I think Polk, in my eyes, is the guy that can come in and get the job done.
Yeah, I mean Polk coming over from Oklahoma, if I look at the guys, because if you look at it from a statistical standpoint, then Roland is the guy as far as at the plate, because I mean
Yeah.
you just mashed, but you mentioned he's from Eastern Oklahoma State, and it's like how good of competition are they playing compared to Polk at Oklahoma, who didn't really play. But it seems like, the few times that he did play, I know in his one start, he at least had a home run. I think he hit like 2 for 4, something like that. I have to go back and look. But, it's going to be interesting to see that one. And Christian, we'll bring you in here, buddy. I love Christian. For people who don't realize, Christian built a spreadsheet for us of like the entire roster. So like he's been looking at it. I'm curious, Christian, I don't know how in depth you've looked at it from a statistical standpoint, but of the JUCO guys, which there's like a ton of them, who impresses you the most? I mean, I feel like Harold Cole might be the answer, but is it him or maybe somebody else?
Yeah. So first of all, I was actually about to ask about the catching situation. So it's funny you asked that. And as far as the JUCO guys, I noticed that we have just a ton of infielders coming in. So, Kabo, maybe you can elaborate on some of that in a little bit. But just what do you think of all these infielders coming in? Harold Cole is probably one of my most intriguing guys coming into the season. Where is he going to play, short, second, or third? And then I had another question later, but I can save it for after.
So if you look at the infielders, and no matter if you bring them in from transfer portal, JUCO, or just from the high school ranks, so those are your three avenues that you're getting. Those are your revenue streams, so to speak, if you're talking on business terms. You look at the 2020 class when they brought in, they had Mason Wynn, Ethan Bates, the Michael Brooks, Robert Moore, all these guys that were shortstops. And they're like, well, why are they signing 6 shortstops? Because those guys can play other positions. The shortstop is the most athletic player on the field. Usually, that's what you're looking at. So that's your most athletic position and your most versatile guy. They have a strong arm because they had the longest throw. You got somebody that's usually pretty fleet of foot. They don't have to be a 6'2", 6'3" runner, but they're quick and they got good feet and they got good hands. So where does that position translate, on the field? Just about everywhere. And it's funny because at 13 years old, Casey Martin was a catcher. And that's what he came over to our prospects program as. He's a catcher. He was quick release, and was a dirtbag back there that was going to block anything in sight. So you've seen that transition before. And some people have talked about Peyton Holt being a catcher. Peyton Holt has never caught a day in his life. Well, he may have back in Little League or something. But talking to Coach Tyler Sawyer from Crowder, is like he never caught for them. They've got 2 or 3 catchers back there. So he's able to play second, third, short. He played shortstop. He can play the corner outfield because he's got a good arm. You got a guy like Easton Swafford, who was shortstop at Southside B Branch. He can play second. I'm pretty sure Stovall, and I think we're all 4 of us are in agreement here. Stovall is going to be our second baseman, right?
Yeah.
They pretty much said, look, that's yours, Peyton. You proved enough during the second half of the season, came back, you did your job by playing first. Now we're going to get you in a better situation for you from a pro level, and scouts can get to see him in the middle infield. Then you got the guys like Harold Cole, Isaac Webb, those guys, and there's a separating factor that you see. I think Cole has more flash. He has more power in the bat. He's got more thump, as you would say, a higher propensity to hit bombs, but he's got a higher propensity to strike out. We saw that. I think he struck out 50 or 60 times for Sanjak last year. So you got somebody that can stay at shortstop. Webb maybe can move to a second. Holt can move to third. So you got a lot of interchangeable parts that that staff knew. Josenberger, he's kind of a versatile guy. I don't think he stays in the middle. He's going to go to a corner outfield spot. So you've got a few outfielders already on the roster. Now you get those athletic guys that can go get it and get it done, maybe from a level. Look at Ethan Bates. And I think Ethan Bates, if he would have stayed at Arkansas this year, would have played in front of Zach Gregory. I just do. That's just being around him, knowing his bat, knowing his work ethic. I think he would have played. He's going to go to Louisiana Tech next year and may play second base, but we know he can play corner outfield as well. So That's why they get so many of those guys, because they're interchangeable and they're versatile. Ethan Swap, he can play any position on the infield, except first base is not very tall, but second, third, short, doesn't matter. And he can play corner outfield. He's a 6'6" runner. So, but the bat plays, and I think it's going to help him down the line play a lot for Arkansas.
Now, based
All
on
right.
what you just said, I want to jump in here.
Yeah.
Based on what you just said about Ethan Bates and Zach Gregory, does that mean that you were not surprised when Gregory decided to transfer out?
Yeah, he kind of saw the writing on the wall, thinking, okay, well, my time, I've gotten everything I can get out of the University of Arkansas. And you guys probably remember this, and what we talked about on the Diamond Hogs podcast, that if you look at everybody in that lineup that they had this year, everybody's a pro prospect but one player. That's Zach Gregory. He did the job he was asked to do. He helped the ball club every way he could. What does he do? He gets on base. That's what they needed out of him in that 9-hole, and play some good outfield, make some flashy catches every now and then, but we're not expecting a ton out of you. And that's what he did. Now he can move on to the second phase of his life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I mean, yeah. I of course we had an emotional investment into Gregory, so
Absolutely.
It was. I feel like it hit at least myself, probably Robert. Christian, you came on late. I don't know how much of a fan of Gregory's you were. I don't know if it was as much like we were fans, or it's just like we really liked posting that Moneyball clip.
Yeah, I'm a huge Moneyball fan.
Exactly.
Huge. Yeah.
Exactly. But before we move on, I do want to remind everybody that one of the big reasons that we're doing the podcast in this live form is for you to be able to interact with us as well. So if you have any questions or anything, type it in the chat wherever you're watching, and we will get to it. Shout out our man, Dwayne Stanrich, always commenting on the YouTube. He commented already. So love you, Dwayne. You're the man. We notice you and we appreciate you. But, yeah, get your questions in here because we might not ask or talk about something that you want. And we might not talk about everybody that you want to hear about. So I want to move on to the two big freshmen that didn't get drafted. Or Mason Neville, he got drafted, but he didn't sign. And then Jason Jones.
Yep.
A lot of talk around those two guys, especially during the draft. After the draft, when Neville announced that he's going to come to campus, he's not going to sign. Jones not getting drafted, a surprise to some people. Rumors flying around. I don't really want to talk about rumors, especially when it's something that I'm not confident in. But we've heard stuff. We've talked to people. And so what is the expectation for those two guys? Because if you just look at, their rating, their prospect rating coming into Fayetteville, it seems like they would be two really good guys for this team. But we know that doesn't always work out.
Yeah. And I'll say my little bit about it and then let Robert and Christian take it. So Neville, got to talk to him, interviewed him on Drive Time Sports the day after the draft. A really cool situation. I was able to get a hold of him, and in fact, on the last day of the draft when he told me I'm coming to Arkansas, and we posted about it, told Mason, and 2 minutes later, Cincinnati picks him, and I'm like, ain't nothing to worry about. They took him on a flyer. For the fans that are watching and listening, a flyer is there's no risk, high reward selection. They had a pick to waste. Okay, let's just throw money out there. Maybe it'll stick. That's what a flyer is. So the comps were to Cody Bellinger and still are to Cody Bellinger. Tempering expectations for a guy to come in and playing center fielder for the Arkansas Razorbacks is a huge burden. Think of the guys that we've had out there, Christian Franklin. And Braden Webb had a great year, slow start, did his thing. Christian Franklin, Andrew Benintendi, Dominic Fletcher, my man, Brett Eibner, going way back, Craig Gentry, Major League Baseball players, first-round draft picks, Golden Spikes winners. Man, what a lineage, So he's going to come in and play hard. 6'3", I would say 180, 185. Really fluid left-handed stick. The hit tool does need some work. He does have some pop, but he tends to get extended too early to where he doesn't have a lot of pop behind the ball. So when he is swinging, his bottom hand, which is his right arm, gets extended at contact, so there's not much punch behind the ball. That's what I mean when I say he gets extended early. And that's something that he knows he needs to work on. So that Coach Thompson's going to help him with that. He's a very fast athlete. He's 6'2", 6'3" runner. He's going to be the fastest kid on campus as far as baseball goes. Good arm. He pitches. He's up to 90, 92 from the outfield. So I think he's going to be a project in terms of offensively, but he's going to be somebody that can patrol the big green ocean, like I like to say. So, and with Jason Jones, last year at this time, I would say no chance he gets to campus because he was playing with a couple of guys. You know, he picked up a couple of tournaments with the Sticks. He grew up playing with the Dallas Tigers. I know a lot of guys in that organization, a lot of guys that I really trust. And Jones has a lot of power in his bat. He's a big athlete. He made some Derek Jeter type plays last summer. Went into a training regimen to where he put on a little bit of weight and his body matured. So the actual number, how much weight did he gain? 20, 30 pounds, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at this point, but he gained a little bit of weight to where he is not going to be able to play shortstop anymore. They don't like the mobility at that position. So third's the next best option, or first, maybe a corner outfield. The hit tool, and hitting and power are two different things for our listeners, and y'all know that. But he couldn't handle really good pitching. And when I say really good pitching, I'm talking the elite level stuff that you're going to see in the SEC. You know, 92, 93 fastball with run in on you, and then exploding sliders. The stuff that first-round draft picks are made out of is in the SEC. He's going to have to adjust to that. He never hit over 400 while at his high school. That's, you know, kind of a red flag. If you're going to be a dude and go in the first 2 rounds, you better hit over 400. You better put up Jackson Holiday, Tamar Johnson type numbers and hit 585. I don't care what league you're playing in. So that's a question mark right there. And he was just out of shape, it seemed like. But everybody thought that, you know, he would never make the campus. He does. And it's just a matter of if he's going to go out there and be that first-round draft pick that everybody thought he was going to be, or is he going to be a bust? That's a possibility. It happens all the time. We've seen top 100 guys get to campus and not make it to the spring. Happens every year. So what will Jason Jones be? Only time will tell.
Yeah. Well, I have a question. So with Mason Neville, what happened with his draft stock? Why did he drop out of getting drafted really high at all? And then what did it have anything to do with coming to campus? Did Arkansas do anything to make it hard for him to go?
So talking to him, he let clubs know that he really wanted to go to camp, really wanted to go to school. And that was something that I could not get out of him or his team, camp, whatever you want to call it, early on. Every sign pointed to him being drafted. So I'm guessing he had a number, just like Caden Wallace did, Jackson Wiggins did coming out of high school, like everybody coming out of high school did. And the major league clubs weighed, okay, are the deficiencies or lack of tools, would we be willing to pay for that? And would we be willing to pay it at a high level? Yeah. So I'm guessing between 1.5 and 2 million. Yeah. That's what I would say would be his number. And clubs weren't really ready to do that. So that puts him on campus. He gets to work at it for a couple of years or 3 years, because he's a 3-year guy. He's a younger guy. And he's going to be able to get into the top 3 round range to where he could possibly make that money.
Mm-hmm. All right. I want to talk some more about, I guess we should probably hit the pitching staff too. We haven't really talked about that at all. Of course, you're returning Will McIntyre, Hagen Smith, Jackson Wiggins, Zach Morris, a lot of really good arms returning. And then they're bringing in some good ones like Cody Frank, Hunter Holland from Sanjak. And then they've got who am I missing? I missed the transfer, didn't I? Cody Adcock, but we don't know how much he'll throw. He's had injury problems. But of those guys, maybe the returning guys, but I really want to talk about the freshman guys. And Cabo, yeah. I mean, that's why we have you here, because you know a lot more about them. You're coaching some of them. You coach against a lot of them. Of the freshman guys, we know Cole Phillips. He signed with the Braves, so he's not going to make it to campus. But who do you look at and say this is someone who could probably make an impact as a freshman, kind of like, you know, Hagen Smith and Brady Tigert did last year?
Yeah, so if you look at the class, the original 19, it was broken down. I think there were 10 pitchers on it. And, you know, some guys get their offers pulled late. Carter Boyd out of North Carolina. probably a preferred walk-on, but he got his offer pulled and going to Appalachian State. You've got some really good arms in this class, though. You got some really good guys that can pitch. And Gage Wood, got to see him develop before my very own eyes. And it was funny because the summer before he got offered, he was 81 to 83, kind of soft around the midsection, hadn't really got on weights that much yet. He was 15, 16. Really bought into it. Evan Lee started working with him, and he kind of took off. And he's 85, 88. Now Kansas State comes calling. And for you guys that don't know, if you get offered by the Big 12, it's a 4-year guaranteed scholarship. So no matter the percentage, it's guaranteed. SEC doesn't have that. So that's the thing that the Big 12 really has an advantage in. If they offer you and say, hey, we want you here, they have to honor it. So no matter if everything falls apart, what have you. So that happened. He committed to Kansas State. And then during that time, we were like, Matt, you need to talking to Matt Hobbs. You need to come see this guy throw. He would be a dude. Well, we want to see him. We want to see him. Well, the offer wasn't what they expected, but Gage took that as a chip on his shoulder and said, okay, look, I'm going to work at it and show him that I'm going to shove it. So the offer came back a little bit better the second time around, and that's where Gage decided he wanted to go. And next thing you know, he's 215 pounds. He's on campus. The fastball is 93, 94. Curveball is a 12-6. He's got a slider, and he's got the potential to be a dude. Push for a potential rotation spot on the weekend. So that's a guy that I really look at that it's his to lose. Cooper Dossett has been talked about a long time because he was an early commit. Cooper's had some arm issues. He went out of the semifinal game against Bentonville, came out after a couple innings. So there was some question about that. He's healthy right now. He's already on campus doing this stuff. So I think Cooper, he has the stuff. It's just is he going to be able to command it? Because when he's in the zone, he's tough to hit, and hitters, he makes hitters really uncomfortable. He's got kind of that wild side of him, kind of like Jackson Wiggins, where you might not know where it's going to go every now and then, but when he zeroes in, he's really good. Kristen Fouch is a kid that's a top 250, 275 guy by perfect game. He's going to be really good. You look at it, out of Colorado, you don't get a whole lot of commits out of Colorado, but he's a low 90s guy. He's going to be really good. Parker Coyle, 6'3", was top 250 on Baseball America's prospect for the MLB Draft. High 80s, low 90s. Ball has some serious late run on it, and it's tough to pick up. He comes from that low 3/4 slot, and he gets on you pretty quick. So he's a 3-pitch guy that, especially from the left side, that they're really going to like early on. Sean Fitzpatrick, smaller kid, about 5'11", 6 foot, 165, needs to put on some weight. He's a mid-80s arm, but he's got that side arm slot that is really nasty. Really good wipeout slider with that. So Kendon Lovell got his offer pulled. Josh Heineman, Ben Bybee. Bybee is one that comes from Overland Park, Blue Southwest up there in that area where Olathe, Kansas, Isaiah Campbell came out of, Christian Franklin, Robert Moore, Overland Park area. Big, tall righty, 6'5", 6'6", low 90s, really shot up draft boards. And one draft board had him a top 50, top 60 candidate. So those guys are really, if I had to put them in order, I would say Wood, Bybee, Parker Coyle. Those are the guys that you really look at and say, okay, if they could come in and help day one, those would be the guys I say, yeah, go after it.
So would you say that Wood is one of those guys that could kind of make an impact, kind of like Tygart and Hagen Smith did this last season?
Yeah, their curveballs are very similar. And I'll say this, Brady Tygart 2 years ago did not have that curveball. He had a slider that kind of had some, had light bite to it and would kind of fall off the table. But that curveball, he didn't have that curveball. When he started throwing it, I was like, well, that's new. And then he got better with it. Was it called too much? Yes, because he's got a really good fastball. And if you can locate your fastball and pitch off of that, he'll be unhittable. That's just one. It's like it's a Kevin Kopps-esque pitch to where you know it's coming, but you can't do anything with it. So he develops that in a changeup. He has the potential to be a rotation spot. So Gage Wood's curveball is really like that in terms of how it falls off the table, and it has induced some very ugly swings because he's very high action with his windup and his motion. A lot like, let's see, what's a good example? Walker Buehler with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Very high impact, and he's firing the glutes and getting after it. So Barrett Lowski is another one that comes to mind. So you got all these arms and elbows and knees flying at you, and then you got 95. Next thing you know, an 81-mile-per-hour curveball that starts at your chest and falls right into the mitt, and you look silly. So it has the potential to do that. And then Coyle's kind of the same way from the left side. He's going to give batters fits, and he's going to make people very uncomfortable. I don't think the velo's quite where Hagen's is, and Hagen came in as a very mature 17-year-old. As you know, he just about to turn 19. Coyle's body is not that mature yet, but the stuff is very similar.
Nice.
So there are 5 returning arms that I want to ask about and what you sort of envision their roles being. The 3 guys that, it seems like if they're basing it off of 2022 postseason performance, the 3 guys that seem like they would get to start are probably Hagen Smith, Will McIntyre, Zach Morris. Now, I imagine Tiger gets a shot at that too. I think you posted on Twitter maybe a couple weeks ago that Jackson Wiggins is like the number 20 college prospect on next year's draft board.
Yeah.
How does he fit into this equation as far as the Arkansas pitching staff goes too?
I think Jackson showed enough, especially in the first half of the season, where he could go 5 or 6 innings and be relied upon as a starter. I think as Jackson, he's working with Marshall Angus Denton this summer, Dustin Mosley, to work on a few things. And being 6'6" is tough because you got to get all the levers going in the same motion, and there's a lot of kinesiology that goes with it. But that's where Jackson needs to really hone in because he's got the arm talent you can't teach. He's been up to 100. ESPN has flashed 101 before. I know we've seen it on the Baum Stadium board, but that fastball and the changeup. The changeup is an MLB pitch. The slider's gotten better. We saw from year 1 to year 2 how much better that has gotten. So if he's able to do that over a longer period of time, I think he starts. If he comes into camp and struggles with it, they're going to put him at the back end of the bullpen and use him as a closer, use him as a setup guy like they did as a freshman. And I like that role for him. I like him coming in with 3 outs and him able to throw 98 to 101 with an 84-mile-per-hour changeup and say, good luck. Okay, hit this. No matter what you've seen before it, it's going to be 99 to 100. And that's tough to catch up with. I don't care if it's flat. It's still 100 miles per hour. So I think that's going to be the question for him. And the other guys you mentioned, Zach Morris, do they want that veteran in the bullpen or do they want him as a starter? That's the only question I have about Zach. I think he can start, but I think Zach has a lot more than 88 to 90 in his fastball. He's 6'3", 220, been up to 94, 95 in the past, his freshman year, the COVID year. So can they get that out of him? He's a year more with the new windup and everything to where he's not so tilted back, as he gets over his front side. So that's going to help his curveball quite a bit. Can he develop a changeup? That's what he needs. Every left-handed pitcher, that's the second pitch they should ever learn is a changeup. So that's got to get better. And for those 2 guys, that's kind of what I see for them, and they'll have to answer that question early on.
So, but as far as like a lefty guy goes, you got Morris, you got Hagen Smith, you were really counting on Bosnick making it. It seems like the best transfer arm that they brought in is Cody Frank, and he fits that role of kind of what you're talking about with Morris as an experienced guy in the bullpen. I think he can be that. Maybe a kind of like Will McIntyre was for most of this or the second half of the season where, he's a guy who can start a game, but he can also give you quality innings out of the bullpen, but he's a righty. Like
Yeah.
so it's like if Hagen Smith is starting games, then they're gonna obviously want a left-handed bullpen guy that's probably gonna. You would think Morris is gonna start over, or Smith is gonna start over Morris.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's going to be tough. You know, you got to see how fall ball is, how they're looking at the spring. A lot of time left, which is good for them. But I think what a lot of people are most curious about, and if you look at Twitter and message boards, especially on the message boards over at HawgBeat.com, go subscribe to HawgBeat.com right now. Best baseball content in Arkansas sports coverage. I promise that. Myself, Cabo, Robert, we're doing a great job over there. Best basketball coverage as well. Jackson Collier, JC Hoops, doing a great job. Just got to plug all that stuff. And we'll also have the best football coverage as well.
That's
So,
right.
but I think that everybody wants to know, what's this lineup going to look like? Because everybody keeps putting out their projected lineups. It seems like every time Arkansas got a transfer, I saw a new projected lineup.
Yeah.
And so Stovall is going to be in the lineup.
Yeah.
Slavens, he's going to be in the lineup. The thing about Slavens, though, is he's probably got to play first base now, right? Because, I mean, you had him as a DH for most of this past season because you were playing Stovall at first. But it's like, I don't know who else would play at first other than like maybe Kendall Diggs, Caleb Cowley. But like, I don't know if Cowley's good enough to be in the lineup at this point because I haven't seen the guy play. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But you think those two guys, probably Kendall Diggs, probably Jace Borfin, Josenberger's probably in the lineup. Wegner, you got to think he's probably in the lineup. What do you think where people are going to be? Because that's the question everybody wants to know. What's the lineup going to look like? I keep getting asked, who's going to play short? Who's going to play first? Who's going to play catcher? So let's let Kevin Bohannon answer that.
Yeah, and you know as much as I do about that. And we probably know as much as that coaching staff does because we don't know how they're going to react once those new guys get on campus and interact with the vets. How's the chemistry going to be? That's always been a huge thing with Dave Van Horn is the chemistry. How these guys fit in our system, our program. And that's why some of those guys have – Blake Adams, we know what happened to Blake Adams. He had a bad game, punched a wall. You know, next thing you know, he's at Kansas State getting drafted. Okay, great. So they fit in or they leave quick. And I think you'll see that early. I think Polk is behind the plate. At first base, is Slavens going to be healthy? That's the big issue. He's having an ulnar nerve release. And that's not just something he's going to miss fall ball. He may get to take some swings later on. So that's why he didn't play much this year.
Yeah, go back on that. I didn't know about that. Did Robert? Did you know about that? Okay.
Yeah. So
I mean, I know health is always a question mark with Slavens, but I didn't know of this particular.
Yeah, he had a nerve issue, and that's one of the reasons he really didn't play much in the field this year. That's one of the big things about it. You know, he really couldn't be that effective at first base. So definitely couldn't in the outfield. So yeah, first base or DH for him. And so where does Kendall Diggs fit in? If Diggs is swinging it like he is now, he's going to be in the lineup, and he's just going to have to be. Now, do they give a 23-year-old guy, and this is where a little coaching philosophy comes into play, a 23-year-old guy who's been in the program for his third year, been in college baseball for 4 or 5 years now, do they let him show scouts what he can do in the field, or do you give your up-and-coming prospect that shot at first base? Do you platoon them? Switch them out. They're both left-handed hitters, so it's not going to be based on pitching matchup. Whoever's the best defender is going to play there because I think they'll both hit, and they'll both hit for power, but I think Diggs is going to hit for a better average. I think we've seen that through summer ball so far. He has the ability to go the other way more. Maybe Slavens will learn and surprise us all. I know, Robert. So second base Stovall. I think Harold Cole is your shortstop. I've just seen way too much of him in the past compared to everybody else to think otherwise. Third base is going to be a battle. McLaughlin, I know he went to Hutchinson Community College, is not a powerhouse, but you got a Gold Glove guy. Yeah, he hit 18 bombs in Kansas, but I'm pretty sure I could hit 10 up there now because the wind's always blowing out no matter what field you're playing on in Kansas, Oklahoma, JUCO. It's always like that. Him and Jason Jones are going to battle it out over there. And if Jason Jones doesn't win out, maybe he transfers. I don't know. but that'll be some. And the wild card is Cali, like you said. Coming from Florida, the Florida JUCO ranks is something when you can put up the numbers like he did. So he's going to figure into that corner infield spot as well. So if you go into the outfield, I think Wegner's your right fielder. I think Borfin maybe, left. He wanted to play center. So do they move him over to left now that Neville's there? I think Mason has the biggest shot to be that center fielder. And then you got somebody like Peyton Holt that can maybe be that fourth guy, or Easton Swafford. So they have options. The guys that I mentioned are probably the front runners for those positions, but it's going to be who hits, and who is the most consistent guy. And they're going to have a more competitive fall than they've ever had. Last year, it was on the mound. This year, it's going to be in the field, because this last fall, we had all the position guys back, and they're like, wow, we know what we got, and we feel really lucky about that. And we all talked to Coach Van Horn. He's like, well, we're going to score 11 runs. Well, we found out really early that wasn't the case. The pitching staff bailed them out. So completely opposite this year. A lot of expectations for the pitching, like you let off in the show, Mason. But the competition is going to be at the next level. And a lot of times competition brings out the best in athletes. And maybe that's what they're expecting with some of these guys. And one name I didn't mention that you did, Mason, was Josenberger. Where is he going to fit in this equation? He was a top 50 prospect 2 years ago, and he went to Kansas. Kansas is not a baseball powerhouse by any means. But athletes come from all shapes and sizes and all forms and all places. So maybe he's that Swiss Army knife that can do just about everything that they ask of and gets into the lineup.
Yeah, Josenberger is a guy that I feel like I kind of adopted him as my favorite guy that they got in the portal for a few reasons. I think that he's better than a lot of people, reacted.
I agree.
Like a lot of people were really disappointed because they just looked at his average and they were like, oh, this dude sucked. He hit that at Kansas. But it's like, I mean, he had multiple 20-plus game hitting streaks, and he had like a 29-game on-base streak. And so that then leads me into he gets on base, and so I can then keep the money ball clip going for Tavian Josenberger. He just gets on base. So, but I genuinely think that, I mean, you mentioned how he was a top prospect a few years ago. I mean, going into last year, he was listed as one of the top prospects for
December. Yeah.
So it's like I think he played outfield. I think he played center his freshman year at Kansas, right?
Yeah.
And then he played second last year. So he could play in the infield. He could play in the outfield. Like he's another one of those guys, as is most of the guys on this current roster, that they can be spread out in a lot of different places that you're talking about. And I think, and we talked about it earlier, I think catcher obviously is the biggest position of question right now. Are we? I mean, you talked about it, Cabo. Robert, were you pretty shocked as well of because I feel like we kept thinking they were going to get that big splash at catcher. And Dave Van Horn, I asked him about big splash, and he was like, I didn't say big splash, but I said that we're going to get somebody. And so I just thought that they were going to get somebody better.
I mean, that last time that we talked to him, he sort of hinted that somebody like Skeens, I think is who you're alluding to, might come here. And, it didn't happen. They didn't land the big splash guy. I don't know. I mean, thing is, like Cabo said it earlier, right? We sit here and we talk about it, but none of it means anything because we haven't seen him play yet. Like I'm hesitant to, voice my thoughts or even have thoughts at all because I just don't know what the team is going to look like. Like I know football season starts tomorrow, but I'm very anxious for fall ball. I just want to see these dudes on a field again.
I need you to say something that'll be a headline. Robert Stewart says that Hudson Polk sucks behind the plate and he'll never play a game at Arkansas. That's what we need. You have to keep that label as most hated guy by the Arkansas baseball team.
I think somebody took that label from me, and I'm not going to try to get it back.
Right, I forgot about that. I think a lot of people have forgotten about that.
I thought that's what you were alluding to. Like we did this we did this little exercise where you try to get me to say something toward the end of the postseason run. There, you're like, you got to fire him up, Robert. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Well, I guess they didn't need to be fired up. They were already fired up.
It's not going to cost me my career.
Yeah, I agree. Good for you. But yeah, the way I look at this team is, Kevin, you talked about it. A lot of competition is going to happen in the fall. Returning a lot of pitchers, so that's really good for them. Talked to a lot of people. They said they're probably going to have to win games, 1-0, 2-0 a lot next year, unless these guys that we're looking at, and because realistically, and at least for myself, for Robert, for most people who are talking about most of these transfers and freshmen, we haven't seen them play any baseball.
Yeah.
We're just looking at their stat line. We're looking at, their average, their RBIs. We're looking at their on base percentage, and we're judging them based off of that. And I think we all know that means nothing.
Yeah.
And so it really comes down to what they're going to look like in a Razorback uniform, and most of them have not worn that yet. So I think it's going to be interesting. Before we wrap this up, I want to ask. I think I should just ask this broad question, because we always ended episodes with weekend MVPs. I think maybe we should predict guys that we think are going to be the biggest impact newcomer for next season on this episode, because we're not going to have a Diamond Hogs podcast until fall ball. So why not? So I'll let who's ready, because I don't want to just put somebody on the spot. Not you, Robert. Christian.
I'll go with that.
Okay, go, Caleb.
I'm going to go with Cody Frank, and the reason I say that, he's a D1 Power 5 transfer. That's obvious. But the uproar that was caused in Lincoln, Nebraska, when he announced he was transferring was epic. We heard it in Little Rock, Arkansas, in Sherwood, Arkansas, where I live. And we have a Nebraska prospects program. It's our sister program. The guy that was down here running our high school showcase runs Nebraska now. And Coach Jacob Wegner. And Cody, they were expecting him. He's going to be an all Big 12, borderline All-American type guy for them, because he was going to be their dude. And to lose somebody like that to Arkansas, what was heartbreaking for them. And knowing that, I feel really good about his chances here.
Yeah, I like Cody Frank. Speaking of him, I got the chance to talk with him a couple days after he committed. Really interesting story. I mean, he didn't have a single offer. He had one single JUCO offer coming out of high school, and he didn't even go there. He went to a different school. When they got it, he went to Eastern Oklahoma State, where Roland's from. And Webb. And so then he wasn't even a starting pitcher. The first game he started there, he threw a no-hitter, or was it a shutout or a no-hitter? I can't remember.
I know it was a shutout. I have to look on the no-hitter.
Yeah, it's in my story over at HawgBeat.com. Just go subscribe to HawgBeat.com and you can get all that information you need. All right, Christian, Robert, one of y'all ready, or should I go?
I can take it.
All right.
I think this may sort of be an easy answer, but I'm gonna go with Jared Wegner. Another one of the dudes coming from D1. If you look at it, his OPS was very, very close to 1,100 last year. I think he had 11 bombs. Played at that big yard at TD Ameritrade. Charles Schwab. And I feel like 11 home runs there is not insignificant. That's a big yard. I feel like we heard so many times about the wind at Baum-Walker Stadium this year. So, maybe if he can put another 11 down, then the Hogs are going to be in good shape, I feel like, with his bat coming in from Creighton.
When I look at Wegner, I immediately, and this is probably just recency bias, I immediately think Chris Lanzilli, like he's the next Chris Lanzilli. Okay.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
But I also think that he might end up being the DH if Slavens plays first, because who else would DH? I mean, Diggs could, depending on if he ends up somewhere in the field. But I mean, Wegner, just based off of his batting stats from Creighton, which this is another one of the things. All I've seen of Wegner is him hitting a single home run, but he should probably be in the lineup. You
Yeah.
know? Okay.
And he was in the running for Big East Player of the Year.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand is, like Robert said, you hit 11 balls. I don't care who they're against. You hit one out of Charles Schwab, Ameritrade, Rosenblatt Stadium. It doesn't matter. It goes. And that's a big deal. So I think he makes an impact too.
Y'all remember that one that Slavens hit to straightaway center? What, 436 feet?
36.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
That
Broke
was
Pete
crazy.
Alonso's record from 2015. That's crazy.
Yeah. Lonzo had a
He's
bad
coming
year
back.
hitting home runs. He took his home run title away from him, and now he doesn't have the longest home run in Omaha anymore.
Yeah.
You're right. He has had a tough month, really. I mean, that all came within a month.
Yeah.
Look, Cable, I'm glad that you said something. And Christian, I'll let you go here in a minute because we got to talk about Juan Soto once we're done here because Robert's here.
Yes.
I would like to see him cry on
Yeah.
the live.
I have thoughts. Yeah. Go
Okay.
ahead, Christian.
So we mentioned him earlier, but I think the big impact guys potentially could be Harold Cole. Well, is he going to fight for shortstop or an infield position? Is he going to be able to hit some homers every now and then? And I mean, after the way Jalen Battles played this year, defensively and offensively at times, who's going to be that guy to step up in the in the middle of the infield, the middle of the lineup, or the beginning of the lineup? Harold Cole has the potential to do that. And like we've been saying just recently, like we haven't seen much of these guys, so we'll see how they play in the SEC. But I was early on with Harold Cole and Wagner as well. I think those are the two guys that will probably have the most impact this next year.
Cabo, is it Mason Neville or Neville?
I've said Neville, but I've heard a lot. Randy on Draft Time says Neville or Neville. I think that's old school with the old school singer. But
We got to go to the source on this one.
Yeah,
I say Neville, and I corrected Mason one time. And you said
Yeah,
Neville.
I was about to say I got burned on this podcast for saying Neville.
Yeah, so
you go
I
and
think
say Neville, Cabo, and nobody said anything. Like it was okay.
He can say it however he wants. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask him. I'm gonna ask where the emphasis on the syllable is. So
There you go.
But I'm going to go with him as my
Yeah.
impact player,
Cool.
Impact newcomer, because he has a great name.
Yeah.
Cabo, you talked me into him because the athleticism is one thing, especially in the outfield. That's something that they really lacked last season. I mean, we heard that Braden Webb was like the greatest center fielder in Arkansas baseball history, but I don't think that was the case. And so I think that they need someone there in center field who can be that center field playmaker that you think of when you think of an Arkansas center fielder. And, he's a guy that was a top prospect for a reason. And so I think that if any of the freshmen are going to come in and make an impact first year, he's got to be the guy, right? And so that's why I'm choosing him.
Yeah.
All right. So Juan Soto. Christian, take it away, man.
Man, so yeah, I was up early this morning, just sitting on my phone, scrolling Twitter, just like refreshing, just trying to see when it would finally happen. And I had him going to the Cardinals, and I was talking to a lot of my buddies, at softball and just like at church and stuff, and I'm like, he has to go to the Cardinals. It's the best fit. They have the most prospects and major league talent available with Gorman and Dylan Carlson. And I thought that it was going to happen, but apparently the Cardinals weren't willing to give Carlson up, which makes sense because he's like probably one of their better players right now. But for Juan Soto, I was like, there's no way they're not going to do it. And then the Padres, of course, swooped in. I think the Padres are just like, we cannot let the Dodgers get him, because I think the Dodgers were a close second. But yeah, that's my initial thoughts on that.
So
I saw that they jumped up the Nationals jumped up from like the 20th ranked farm system to like number 6 just based off that trade.
It was 8, and if you include Mackenzie Gore, I think is his name.
yeah,
If you include him, I think he recently graduated from prospect status or something like that. But if you include him, they jumped up to 5.
yeah.
So here's the thing. Like Christian just said, the Padres swooped in to beat the Dodgers, and you know what? I respect that. I don't hate the destination.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Cabo. Sorry about that.
No, you're good. I'm a Dodgers fan, so I kind of hated to see it. And I'm not saying I'm not a Dodgers fan because of the homerisms and lately, but I remember the 4 straight Rookie of the Years with Piazza, Caros, Mondesi, go on, what have you. So
wow,
I've seen Abrams, I've seen Mackenzie Gore, I've seen Robert Hassel III play. Mackenzie was the number 3 pick. Abrams was number 6, and Hassel's number 8. So you got 3 top 10 picks. I didn't even look at James Wood, but
I think what was Gore? I think Gore was up there too.
yeah, he was in. Yeah, Mackenzie Gore number 3. Yeah,
Okay.
he went 3rd overall, and then
Yeah.
Susana and Luke Voigt. I mean, good Lord, what a haul! So
Wow.
yeah, they gave up the farm literally to get him. But now you got him, Manny, and Tatis Jr. I mean,
it's
I
gonna
know
a lot of
you
fun to
were
watch.
upset.
Yeah.
Robert, you were upset that the Nationals didn't get Kevin Kopps in that deal.
Yeah, I was hoping I'd at least get that consolation prize.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No.
I'm going to be honest. I was really hoping that Soto went to the Dodgers because I know how much it would have broken Robert's heart. And
Yeah,
that
and you would
would've
have
made me so
mercilessly
happy.
bullied me for the next until
Yeah.
he hits free agency.
I
Every
would
great
have.
professional
You know,
goes
I
out.
was listening to a podcast recently that said Trey Turner is one of like the top 3 players in baseball right now, and I was just like, didn't he used to play for the Nationals and now he's on the Dodgers? Yeah.
Just like Anthony Rendon, just like Bryce Harper. Can you believe that all 4 of those guys were on the same team in 2018, and
Yeah.
Washington failed to re-sign every
Yeah.
single one of them?
Was
there
Schwarber
was
on
a
that
pretty
team?
good pitcher too, wasn't there?
Yeah.
He wasn't
Scherzer.
homegrown though.
I think that's
Wow.
his name. Yeah. Was Schwarber
And-
on that team?
No.
not in 2018.
No,
No, Max Scherzer was the best free agent money the Nationals have ever spent.
that's absolutely correct.
One of the-
I think
the best-
they got what they needed out of Scherzer. I'm not as upset about that one, but the fact that the 4 position players are all homegrown, and they said they were going to save money on Harper to sign Rendon. They said that they were going to save money on Rendon to sign Turner. They said they were going to save money on Turner to sign Soto, and now Soto's gone. So who's
And so
next?
they ended up signing.
Hey,
they
that's
ended up
not their
signing-
fault. They offered him $440 million. So
Okay. I think it was an unfortunate leak, honestly, because
I do too.
I understand the deal from both sides. Like,
Yeah.
that's the most aggressive offer the Nats have ever presented. There was no way Soto was going to accept it because 15 years is too long for anything. There's
Mhm.
also an ownership change going on. Like, I understand he wants to see who the new ownership group is,
Yeah.
and obviously the AAV wasn't nearly what it needed to be. So it sucks, but here we are.
Maybe if they would have flown him on their jet to the home run derby, then he might have signed with the Nationals, but that's tough.
Yeah, it was a
That wasn't going to make the
tough
difference.
look. And then he ended up winning the home run derby anyways. So.
Yeah. Screw it.
Gee.
I'll win anyway.
Yeah.
It's just crazy that it's the best player you've ever had wear the uniform, and he's gone before he's even hit his prime, probably.
Yeah.
And
He can't even rent a car, or
I
rent
know.
a condo in Florida.
Oh,
You got to be
yeah.
25 to rent a condo in Florida.
I know.
He was drinking grape juice when they won the pennant in 2019. Like,
That's
The
funny.
interesting thing will be too, do the Padres re-sign him or does he go to free agency? Well, I know Scott Boras wants him to go to free agency, so that haul.
he's going to free agency. I think it's more likely the Padres trade him before he becomes a free agent than he signs an
Absolutely.
extension before he goes to free agency.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. But so Cabo, I was gonna say, you said you're a Dodgers fan, so I know last season those Dodgers and Padres series, every one of them were electric.
Yeah.
Like they were so fun to watch, and I think that this just kind of is going to reignite that, like going into the postseason.
Yeah, it does. And the Padres, the best uniforms they had were right when Tony Gwynn at the end of the Tony Gwynn era, when they had when they went to the World Series with the dark blue, and they got away from the brown and the baby puke gold, but now they got those back, and that seems to be the hip hop new thing now. So actually, was at one of those series last year at Petco. Wearing the Dodger blue, and still awesome. So yeah, it's gonna create that rivalry that I think it was needed, and because there's so much emphasis on the East Coast with the Yankees and the Red Sox, that type of rivalry was lacking on the left coast, and now you kind of got that reignition, like you said. It's been reignited for sure. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
All right, boys, that's going to do it for us on this season, this whole season of the Diamond Hogs podcast. We'll have some episodes during fall ball, so be looking out for that. But until then, we'll have some football content. Got a new football podcast coming out in like the next few days. We also have the Recruiting Hogs podcast. You can check all that out. at HawgBeat.com and on the HawgBeat YouTube. So go subscribe to both of those. But thank you guys, and thank you everybody for listening. We loved it. It was a great season, and we cannot wait until next season.
Thanks, Gabo.
See you guys. Thanks for having me again.